Before we delve into the chilling narrative that's about to unfold, a story so meticulously crafted from shadows and the darkest corners of the human psyche, I urge you to prepare yourself. This isn't just a tale. It's an exploration into the abyss, a journey through the heart of a nightmare that once gripped a nation. If you find yourself captivated, disturbed, or simply drawn into the intricate web of this medical monster, remember to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts. Your engagement helps bring more untold horrors, more gripping mysteries, and more profound insights into the light. Now, dim the lights, silence your distractions, and let us begin. This is the saga of Dr. Elias Thorne, a name etched in infamy, a man who transformed the sanctity of healing into a theater of terror. The year was 2008. The financial world teetered on the brink, a grand, chaotic ballet of collapsing markets and shattered dreams. Yet, for the residents of Willow Creek, a quaint, affluent suburban town nestled amidst rolling hills an hour north of Boston, the most unsettling tremors were far more insidious, far more personal. They weren't about stock portfolios or housing bubbles. They were about life, death, and the terrifying realization that the very hands meant to save could, instead, betray. Willow Creek General Hospital was the town's pride, a modern facility with state-of-the-art equipment and a reputation for compassionate care. It was the kind of place where you trusted your loved ones, your children, your own fragile existence. At its heart was Dr. Elias Thorne, a man whose presence exuded an almost mythical aura of competence and calm. He was an anesthesiologist, a master of the delicate art of ushering patients into the quiet slumber of surgery and guiding them back to wakefulness. His resume was impeccable. A graduate of Harvard Medical School, residency at Johns Hopkins, fellowships in prestigious institutions. He was tall, with a neatly trimmed beard that framed an intelligent, empathetic face, and eyes that seemed to hold both deep wisdom and an unsettling, almost too still intensity. Patients adored him. Colleagues respected him, if not slightly intimidated by his almost flawless precision and unwavering composure under pressure. The first hint of something amiss came subtly, like a faint, discordant note in a meticulously composed symphony. It began with Mrs. Agnes Finch, an 82-year-old woman undergoing a routine hip replacement. She was frail, yes, but her pre-op vitals were stable, her spirits surprisingly robust for someone her age facing surgery. Dr. Thorne administered the anesthetic. The surgery proceeded without a hitch. Yet, Agnes never woke up. Her heart, strong just moments before, simply stopped. The official cause was listed as acute cardiac arrest during recovery, a tragic, though not entirely unheard of, complication in elderly patients. Dr. Thorne offered his condolences to the distraught family with a gravitas that felt genuine. His voice a low, comforting murmur. He even suggested a small donation in her name to the hospital's palliative care unit. The Finches were heartbroken but appreciative of his compassion. A month later, it was Mr. Walter Jenkins, a spry 67-year-old suffering from gallstones. He was a golfer, a grandfather who still played catch with his grandkids. His surgery was laparoscopic, minimally invasive. Dr. Thorne was, again, the anesthesiologist. Post-op, Walter developed sudden, severe respiratory distress. Despite frantic efforts, he too passed away. The cause: unexplained acute respiratory failure, likely pulmonary embolism. Another tragic coincidence. Dr. Thorne was visible, quietly supportive, always ready with a medical explanation that, while grim, sounded entirely plausible. He was, after all, an expert. 2 more deaths followed in quick succession over the next 3 months. A healthy 50-year-old woman undergoing a hysterectomy and a teenager with a burst appendix. Both had Dr. Thorne on their anesthetic team. Both died unexpectedly in recovery, their systems failing inexplicably. The pattern, while still faint, began to prick at the edges of the hospital's meticulously maintained calm. Dr. Eleanor Vance, a veteran ER physician and the hospital's unofficial conscience, was the first to vocalize her unease. She wasn't one for gossip or baseless speculation, but the statistics were starting to gnaw at her. She pulled up the hospital's mortality rates, specifically looking at post-operative deaths. The numbers were slightly, almost imperceptibly, creeping upwards, and a disproportionate number of these deaths involved patients under Dr. Thorne's care. She approached Dr. Eris Thorne, Elias's younger brother and the hospital's chief of surgery. Eris, a brilliant but somewhat arrogant surgeon, initially dismissed her concerns. "Eleanor, people die in hospitals, especially after surgery. Elias is one of our best. He's meticulous. It's just bad luck. A string of unfortunate but unrelated incidents. For healthy-ish patients, Eris? All with unexplained post-op complications that lead to death. All with Elias as the anesthesiologist? That's not just bad luck. That's a statistical anomaly at the very least." Eleanor's voice was firm, her eyes unyielding. Eris sighed, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "Look, I get it. It's unsettling. But what are you suggesting? That Elias is incompetent? He has the best track record. He's never had a malpractice suit. Never even a serious complaint." "I'm not suggesting incompetence, Eris," Eleanor said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I'm suggesting we look closer. A full review of these cases. Autopsies that are more thorough than usual. What if something is being missed?" Eris, despite his initial defensiveness, respected Eleanor. He knew she wasn't prone to hysteria. He agreed to discreetly initiate a review, but he warned her to tread carefully. Elias is highly regarded. Any suggestion of malfeasance without concrete evidence could ruin his career and, frankly, damage the hospital's reputation irreparably. The internal review was conducted quietly, led by Dr. Lena Petrova, a stern but fair head of internal medicine. She meticulously examined patient charts, operative reports, and lab results. The findings were frustratingly inconclusive. The official causes of death still held, backed by medical consensus. There was no direct evidence of negligence, no misdiagnoses, no apparent errors in anesthetic dosage or administration, at least not on paper. Dr. Thorne's documentation was flawless, each entry precise and timely. It was like trying to catch smoke. Yet, Lena, like Eleanor, felt the persistent chill of unease. There was a subtlety to the deaths, a lack of clear-cut pathology that bothered her. The patients simply deteriorated. Their bodies shut down without a clear, identifiable assailant. It was too clean. One afternoon, while reviewing Agnes Finch's chart for the third time, Lena noticed a small, almost imperceptible detail. A trace amount of a particular sedative, midazolam, was slightly higher in her post-mortem toxicology report than would be expected for a standard anesthetic protocol, even considering post-mortem redistribution. It wasn't enough to be definitively lethal on its own, especially combined with other anesthetic agents. But it was there. She cross-referenced with Walter Jenkins's report. Similar, though even fainter, traces. And the other two. Nothing significant. It was inconsistent. She brought it to Eleanor. "It's barely there, Eleanor. Could be an anomaly, lab error, or just within the wide range of acceptable variations. But it's something. And it's odd that it's present in 2 cases, but not the others, if he's supposedly administering a standard cocktail." Eleanor's brow furrowed. "Midazolam. It's a benzodiazepine, used for sedation, anxiety. In higher doses, it can suppress respiration, cardiac function, especially in the elderly or those with underlying conditions. But Elias would know that. He's an expert." "Precisely," Lena countered. "He would know the exact dose that could be lethal and the dose that would raise suspicion. And he would know how quickly it metabolizes." The 2 doctors exchanged a look that spoke volumes. The whisper of doubt was growing louder, but it was still just a whisper, overshadowed by the daunting reputation of Dr. Elias Thorne. How do you accuse a highly respected, brilliant doctor of such heinous acts without a shred of concrete evidence? Without a motive? They decided to consult with an outside expert quietly, off the books. Dr. Marcus Thorne, Elias and Eris's older brother, a renowned forensic toxicologist at a major university hospital in Boston, seemed the logical, albeit complicated, choice. He was family, but also an objective scientist. Eleanor made the call, omitting Elias's name initially, presenting it as a purely academic query about unusual postoperative deaths in elderly patients. Marcus was intrigued. He agreed to review the anonymized reports. Days turned into a tense week. Then Marcus called Eleanor. His voice was grave. "Eleanor, I've looked at the reports. The toxicology in Mrs. Finch and Mr. Jenkins, while subtle, is concerning. The levels of midazolam, combined with the other anesthetic agents, could have created a synergistic effect, leading to cardiac or respiratory arrest, particularly in vulnerable patients. It's not a smoking gun, but it's a very sharp, very pointed needle." "And the other two?" Eleanor asked, holding her breath. "Clean," Marcus replied, "which is almost more unsettling. It suggests a certain level of selectivity, or perhaps a learning curve. If someone were intentionally causing these deaths, they'd want to refine their method, make it less detectable." The implication hung heavy in the air. "Are you saying what I think you're saying, Marcus?" There was a long pause. "I'm saying," Marcus finally stated, his voice devoid of emotion, "that these deaths are highly suspicious. And if I were still working in forensic pathology, I'd push for full, comprehensive autopsies with specific instructions for advanced toxicology screens, looking for highly potent, rapidly metabolized agents that are hard to detect." Eleanor thanked him, her mind reeling. The whispers had become a roar in her ears. She knew, with a chilling certainty, that they were no longer dealing with unfortunate coincidences or medical anomalies. They were facing something far darker, something monstrous. The realization sent a cold shiver down her spine. The sanctuary of Willow Creek General was not safe. And Dr. Elias Thorne, the epitome of medical excellence, was now the prime suspect in a series of deaths that, if proven, would shatter the community and unleash a terror beyond imagination. The question now wasn't if he was doing it, but how to prove it and why. The hunt for a phantom killer, operating in plain sight, had just begun. And they knew, deep down, that many more lives were at stake. The curtain had been pulled back, just a fraction, revealing the dark stage where Dr. Elias Thorne performed his deadly art. The first whisper of doubt had grown into a chilling premonition of horror. The revelation from Dr. Marcus Thorne hung in the air like a noxious gas, invisible but suffocating. Eleanor Vance, Lena Petrova, and Eris Thorne, a grim trio bound by a horrifying secret, found themselves navigating a labyrinth of suspicion and fear. The internal investigation, once a quiet, almost apologetic formality, now carried a chilling urgency. They were hunting a ghost, a medical phantom operating within the very walls designed for healing, and that ghost was Dr. Elias Thorne. Eris, initially the most resistant, was now the most visibly shaken. The idea that his own brother, a man he had admired and looked up to, could be responsible for such atrocities was an unbearable weight. His usual arrogance had evaporated, replaced by a pale, haunted look. "My God," he whispered, staring at the anonymized reports that Marcus had reviewed. "My own brother. A killer?" The words were a raw, disbelieving gasp. "We don't have proof, Eris," Eleanor cautioned, though her voice lacked conviction. "Just highly suspicious circumstances and an expert's opinion pointing towards deliberate intervention." "But it's enough," Lena interjected, her usually composed demeanor now strained. "Enough to know we can't ignore it. We need to escalate this, but how? We can't just go to the police with a feeling and a toxicology report that's subtle. He'd shred us. He's too smart." The immediate challenge was clear: how to gather irrefutable evidence against a man who was not only highly intelligent and meticulous but also intimately familiar with the very systems designed to catch such malfeasance. Elias Thorne knew how the hospital worked, how investigations were conducted, how to cover his tracks. He was the serpent in their sanctuary, and he knew every hidden passage. They decided on a multi-pronged, covert approach. First, they would re-examine every single death that occurred under Dr. Thorne's care for the past 5 years. This was a Herculean task, requiring painstaking review of thousands of medical records, all under the guise of a routine quality control audit. They enlisted a small, trusted team of administrative staff, carefully vetted for their discretion, not revealing the true nature of their search. Second, They needed a way to observe Elias without tipping him off. This was incredibly difficult in a bustling hospital environment. Nurses and residents were often rotated, and direct surveillance was impossible. Eris, as chief of surgery, used his authority to ensure that for any complex or high-risk surgeries involving Dr. Thorne, either he or Eleanor would be present in the operating room, ostensibly for training purposes or peer review. This was risky as Elias might grow suspicious, but it was their only way to witness his actions directly. Days bled into weeks, each one a tightening knot of anxiety. Eleanor, in the OR, watched Elias with an intensity she had to carefully mask. He was, as always, a paragon of professionalism. His movements were precise, his voice calm, his monitoring of the patient's vitals unwavering. He rarely made small talk, focusing solely on his task. Yet, Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that beneath that placid exterior, a predator was at work. She noticed small things, the way his eyes would sometimes linger on a specific vial, the almost imperceptible tremor in his hand when drawing a particular syringe, quickly controlled. Or was she just imagining things, projecting her fears onto an innocent man? The doubt was a cruel torment. Meanwhile, Lena and her team delved deeper into the archives. The pattern, once indistinct, began to sharpen. They found more deaths, sporadic at first, then gradually increasing in frequency over the years. Not every patient Elias treated died, of course. Many recovered perfectly, but the number of unexplained post-operative deaths attributed to cardiac arrest, respiratory failure, or sudden systemic collapse under his care was statistically impossible. It screamed for attention. They discovered something even more disturbing. The deaths were not random. They seemed to target patients who were either elderly and frail, making their demise less suspicious, or, chillingly, those who had no immediate family or close connections. Patients who might not have had anyone pushing for a rigorous autopsy or demanding answers. It suggested a cunning, calculated mind. One evening, deep into their clandestine investigation, Lena stumbled upon a crucial piece of information. She was reviewing the hospital's pharmacy logs, a tedious task of cross-referencing patient records with drug disbursements. Dr. Thorne had a surprisingly high number of requests for specific medications, often in small, unusual quantities, that weren't always clearly documented in patient charts or seemed slightly off for the listed procedures. Specifically, she noted repeated orders for a potent, fast-acting paralytic agent called vecuronium, a drug used to relax muscles during intubation but, in higher doses and without proper reversal, could cause respiratory arrest and death, leaving very little trace in the body. It was also, crucially, a drug that metabolized quickly, making it difficult to detect in standard toxicology screens. Her blood ran cold. Vecuronium. It was the perfect murder weapon for an anesthesiologist. Administered post-surgery, during recovery, a small, untraceable dose could simply stop a patient from breathing. Their death would look like a natural, sudden respiratory arrest. She immediately called Eleanor and Eris, her voice tight with a terrifying excitement. Vecuronium. He's been ordering it. Not a lot, but consistently just enough to be suspicious. And the orders often precede a patient's unexplained death. It's what Marcus was talking about, rapidly metabolized agents. Eris paled. Vecuronium. My God. It explains everything. The respiratory failures, the cardiac arrests. If you can't breathe, your heart stops. And it's so hard to detect. We need a live target, Eleanor stated, her voice grim and resolute. We need to catch him in the act, or at least with irrefutable evidence that he's administering it when he shouldn't be. This isn't enough for a conviction, but it's enough for an intervention. The opportunity arose faster than they anticipated. A new patient, a wealthy but estranged elderly man named Mr. Arthur Caldwell, was scheduled for a minor surgical procedure, carpal tunnel release. He had no close family listed, and his medical history, while not dire, suggested a slightly weakened respiratory system. Dr. Elias Thorne was assigned as his anesthesiologist. This was their chance. Eleanor approached Eris. Eris, I want to be in that, or not just observing. I want to be his assistant, and I want Lena to be on standby in recovery. Every vial, every syringe, Every single movement needs to be documented. Eris hesitated, his face a mask of conflict. If he suspects anything, Eleanor, he could cover his tracks, or worse. He's not just cunning, he's dangerous. We have to take the risk, Eris. If we don't, who knows how many more will die. They devised a plan. Eleanor would volunteer as Dr. Thorne's anesthesia assistant for Mr. Caldwell's surgery, citing a desire to refresh her own anesthesia skills. Lena, meanwhile, arranged for a random drug audit in the pharmacy on the day of the surgery, specifically targeting vecuronium and other paralytic agents, ensuring she would be present when Elias collected his drugs. The day of Mr. Caldwell's surgery was thick with tension. The air in Willow Creek General seemed heavy, pregnant with unspoken dread. Eleanor watched Elias in pre-op. He was charm personified, reassuring Mr. Caldwell with his practiced, gentle demeanor. He smiled, he listened, he exuded an aura of calm competence. It was a perfect mask. In the OR, Eleanor positioned herself strategically. Every time Elias drew a medication, she covertly noted the vial, the dosage, the time. She observed his hands, his eyes. He moved with the usual precision, administering the standard cocktail of sedatives and analgesics. There was no overt deviation. The surgery was brief, successful. Mr. Caldwell was wheeled into recovery, groggy but stable. This was the critical phase. The unexplained deaths always occurred in recovery. Lena was already there, disguised as a pharmacy technician, making her audit. She stood near the recovery bay where Mr. Caldwell was situated. She watched Elias approach the patient, a small, almost imperceptible vial in his hand, not one of the standard recovery medications. He leaned over Mr. Caldwell, pretending to adjust his oxygen mask. Eleanor, observing from a distance, saw a flash of silver, the glint of a needle. It was quick, subtle, masterful. He then calmly made a note on the patient's chart, his movements smooth and practiced. Lena, with a cold dread gripping her, made eye contact with Eleanor across the room. The message was clear, he did it. Just minutes later, Mr. Caldwell's monitors began to shriek. His oxygen saturation plummeted. His breathing became shallow, then ceased. The rapid response team, including Eleanor and Lena, converged instantly. They began resuscitation, but it was futile. Mr. Caldwell's heart, deprived of oxygen, flatlined. Dr. Elias Thorne, standing calmly at the foot of the bed, looked up, his face a mask of sorrow. "Acute respiratory failure," he declared, his voice somber. "A tragic complication, despite our best efforts." But this time they were ready. As the chaos of Mr. Caldwell's death swirled around them, Eleanor caught Elias's eye. For a fleeting moment, his calm facade cracked. There was a flicker, a brief, chilling spark in his eyes, not of sorrow, but of something akin to triumph. And in that moment, Eleanor knew with absolute certainty that they had just witnessed a murder. "Get a full toxicology screen, immediately," Eleanor whispered urgently to a bewildered but loyal nurse, indicating Mr. Caldwell's blood samples, specifically for vecuronium, "and make sure it's sent to an external lab, not our own." The game had changed. The whisper had become a scream. They had a body, a method, and a witness. The serpent had finally shown its fangs, and the sanctuary was now a crime scene. The long, terrifying road to justice, or perhaps to a final confrontation, had just begun. The weight of their discovery was immense, threatening to crush them, but the burning need for justice fueled their resolve. They were no longer just colleagues. They were now detectives, and their target was one of their own. The chaos following Mr. Caldwell's death was a meticulously orchestrated storm. While the immediate hospital staff believed they were battling a medical emergency, Eleanor, Lena, and Eris were executing the final, perilous stage of their plan. Eleanor, her heart pounding but her face a mask of professional grief, ensured Mr. Caldwell's blood samples were swiftly and discreetly sent to Dr. Marcus Thorne's external lab in Boston, bypassing Willow Creek General's internal toxicology department. Lena, meanwhile, secured the remaining vials of vecuronium from the pharmacy, ensuring no tampering could occur. The results from Marcus Thorne's lab arrived with terrifying speed, less than 24 hours later. The report was concise, damning, and irrefutable. High levels of vecuronium were detected in Mr. Caldwell's system, far beyond any therapeutic dose, especially given the short time between its suspected administration and his death. This was the smoking gun. This was the proof they desperately needed. Armed with the toxicology report, Eleanor, Lena, and Eris immediately contacted the state medical board and the local police department. Given the extraordinary nature of the allegations, a highly respected doctor suspected of serial murder within a hospital, the authorities moved with swift, silent precision. The hospital was placed under a soft lockdown, preventing Elias Thorne from leaving, though he was still unaware of the net tightening around him. A team of detectives, led by the astute Detective Miller, arrived at Willow Creek General. They met with the trio in a secluded office, the atmosphere thick with the gravity of their confession. Eleanor laid out the timeline, the patterns, the previous unexplained deaths, and finally, Mr. Caldwell's murder, complete with Lena's pharmacy audit notes and Marcus's toxicology report. Eris, his voice strained but firm, corroborated their statements, recounting his own agonizing journey from disbelief to grim acceptance. Detective Miller listened, his expression unreadable, occasionally scribbling notes. When they finished, he looked at them, his eyes sharp. "Dr. Thorne is still on duty?" "Yes," Eleanor confirmed. "We didn't want to alert him until we had concrete evidence and a plan for his apprehension. He's too dangerous, too cunning, to be taken lightly." "Good," Miller said, nodding slowly. "We'll need him brought in for questioning. Under the pretense of a routine audit of his recent cases, perhaps. We don't want to spook him." The apprehension of Dr. Elias Thorne was orchestrated with the precision of a military operation. He was called into Dr. Eris Thorne's office, ostensibly to discuss a minor discrepancy in his recent patient charting. As Elias walked into the room, he was met not only by his brother but also by Detective Miller and two uniformed officers. The moment his eyes registered the police, a flicker of something ancient and cold passed through them, quickly masked by his usual calm. "Dr. Thorne, we need to ask you a few questions regarding some recent patient fatalities." Detective Miller began, his voice devoid of emotion. Elias raised an eyebrow, a hint of his old condescension returning. "Fatalities are unfortunately a part of medicine, Detective. I assure you, my care has always been exemplary. Is there a specific concern?" "Yes, there is," Miller replied, pushing the toxicology report for Mr. Caldwell across the table. "This is from Mr. Arthur Caldwell's post-mortem toxicology screen. Do you recognize the substance, Doctor?" Elias picked up the report, his gaze scanning the document. His face remained impassive, but a subtle clenching of his jaw was the only tell. He looked up, his eyes meeting Miller's. "Vecuronium, a muscle relaxant, used during surgery. What about it?" "The levels found in Mr. Caldwell's system are highly inconsistent with therapeutic use, Doctor," Miller stated, leaning forward slightly. "And they were administered post-surgery during recovery, leading directly to his death." Elias paused, then gave a soft, almost imperceptible chuckle. "A lab error, perhaps? Or a contamination? It's highly unlikely. My protocols are rigorous." "We have witnesses, Dr. Thorne," Eleanor interjected, stepping forward. "We saw you, and we have records of your unusual vecuronium orders preceding other unexplained deaths." At her words, the mask finally shattered. The calm dissipated, replaced by a raw, unadulterated rage that distorted his features. You betrayed me," he snarled, his eyes fixing on Eris, then on Eleanor. "You think you can understand? You think you know what it takes? The weakness, the endless parade of the weak, begging to be saved, when they're already beyond saving." His words were a torrent, a dark confession pouring out. They were burdens, to themselves, to their families, to the healthcare system. I was simply facilitating their release, a mercy, and to think you, my own brother, would turn against me for it. The outburst was chilling, It wasn't an admission of guilt out of remorse, but an arrogant justification, a glimpse into the twisted psyche of a man who saw himself as an arbiter of life and death, a god in sterile scrubs. Dr. Elias Thorne was arrested on the spot. The news, when it finally broke, hit Willow Creek like a seismic shockwave. The man they had trusted implicitly, the compassionate doctor, was a serial killer. The media descended upon the town, turning the quiet suburban haven into a circus of grim fascination. The Angel of Death, the Doctor of Doom, the Willow Creek Butcher, the headlines screamed, each more sensational than the last. The ensuing investigation uncovered a chilling pattern stretching back years. Using advanced forensic techniques, bodies of previous unexplained death victims under Thorne's care were exhumed. Autopsies, now specifically targeting ultratrace paralytic agents, revealed the same insidious signature. Vecuronium or other rapidly metabolizing drugs, expertly administered to induce death, often masked by the patient's existing fragilities. The death toll slowly, horrifyingly, climbed. It became clear that Elias Thorne had been practicing his deadly art for at least a decade, possibly longer, meticulously erasing his tracks. The motive, as far as psychiatrists could discern, was a complex mix of a God complex, a profound disdain for what he perceived as weakness in his patients, and a perverse sense of control. He saw himself as a benevolent angel, ending suffering, though he chose who suffered and who died. He believed he was above the law, above morality, driven by a self-righteous conviction that he knew best. The trial was a sensation. Eleanor, Lena, and Eris testified, their words a powerful testament to their courage and unwavering pursuit of truth. Dr. Marcus Thorne presented the irrefutable scientific evidence. The sheer weight of circumstantial evidence, combined with Elias's own chilling admissions and the overwhelming forensic findings, sealed his fate. Dr. Elias Thorne was found guilty on multiple counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring he would never again hold a syringe or stand over a vulnerable patient. He remained unrepentant to the end, maintaining his twisted belief that he was a savior, not a monster. The aftermath for Willow Creek General Hospital was profound. Its reputation was shattered, its trust betrayed. The hospital underwent a massive overhaul of its security protocols, drug accountability systems, and patient death review processes. Eleanor Vance was promoted to Chief of Staff, leading the charge to rebuild trust and implement new safeguards. Lena Petrova became Head of Quality Control, ensuring such a tragedy could never happen again. Eris Thorne, haunted by his brother's actions, initially considered leaving medicine altogether but ultimately decided to stay, dedicating himself to ethical practice and oversight, determined to honor the victims his brother had so cruelly taken. The wounds in Willow Creek ran deep, a scar etched into the community's psyche. Families of the victims found a measure of closure but lived with the agonizing knowledge that their loved ones had been murdered by the very person sworn to heal them. The story of Dr. Elias Thorne became a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder that evil can wear the most benevolent disguise, operating in the most sacred of spaces. And so, the tale of the serpent in the sanctuary concluded, leaving behind a legacy of horror, resilience, and the somber realization that sometimes, the greatest monsters are not found in the shadows, but in the blinding light of a hospital operating room, cloaked in a white coat and a deceptive smile. The lessons learned were hard-won, paid for in innocent lives, but they served as a stark warning, etched forever into the annals of medical history. The whisper of doubt had become a deafening scream for justice, and finally, it had been heard.